There are several sections in this textbook that I think are some of the best available anywhere. However, one part where I think our textbook does a topic some disservice is the idea of mergers and acquisitions, because it couches it strictly in the standpoint of diversification. Mergers and acquisitions is most certainly a corporate strategy, but as you're going to see in our discussion, I think there's a lot more going on in mergers and acquisitions than simply diversification. So here's some key terms on the chart that I want to make sure you understand. And then I want us to look at some famous M&As. You can come up with more, but as you can see on the bottom of the slide, I put up there M&As are the sport of kings and queens. This is very sexy stuff that grabs the front page of the Wall Street Journal on a weekly basis. It's also very commonly done. But let's skip to the bottom and say, how well does it work? Well, it works pretty well for companies that are being acquired, particularly for the shareholders of companies that are being acquired. But from the standpoint of the acquirers, this is no panacea. It's a lot like diversification. In some cases it works well, in other cases it doesn't work well. And sometimes it's just so baffling, because if you go to the top, back in it was about 2000, when AOL and Time Warner merged, and it seemed like the perfect marriage. AOL, which at that time was the leading pipe to connect to the internet, with Time Warner, which had all the content. So I've got the pipes, I've got the content, a marriage made in heaven, until it wasn't. And so these things, like I said, this synergy, this pirate's treasure, it's often looked for, it's hard to find. The key thing I want you to walk away with, though, and part of the reason why this textbook, I think, gives M&As a short shrift is not all M&As have the same strategic rationale, and that's very important, because they don't have the same strategic rationale. They have different aims, different outcomes, and different key points. So the three ways that I want you to think of M&As, I want you to think of them as consolidation, and this is about the things you see on the slide, extension, and then entrepreneurship. And I'll talk about in the slides to come, but I would encourage you periodically to step back and look back to that front page of some famous M&As and try to ask yourself what was going on in this. So M&As is consolidation. Like I said, this is a play for market power and usually to cut costs through downsizing. If you go back to that front page, Anheuser-Busch, InBev, there's a little bit of extension going on there, but there's a lot of consolidation. Definitely the merger of Delta and Northwest, which set off a lot of other airline mergers, is highly a consolidation move. You could consider some elements of vertical integration consolidation moves as well, although again, that can start to look a little bit like an extension. What typically happens is, how do you reduce market power? Well, go back to Porter's five forces. You suddenly make your company a bigger gorilla in the middle of those five forces, and you get pricing power. One of the things that's been important for the airlines and why these M&As have tended to work out fairly well is they took out capacity. So they lowered their costs because they weren't flying as many flights. But because the same number of people were flying, there were more people getting on each airplane. So there's been a lot of talk of disciplined capacity growth. In other words, not adding more flights than you can fly profitably. That's much easier to orchestrate when you have consolidated players. And you're not having to fight a whole bunch of different rivals. And so who kind of loses there? It's a little bit the customer, because airlines have been able to keep their prices up while keeping the airplanes full. So that's a bid for market power. And then cost savings. You see this as two banks merge, two stores merge, whatever. And what are they going to do? How many legal departments are they going to have? One. How many marketing departments are they going to have? One. So you end up being able to let a lot of people go, typically at the headquarters, in theory, saving a lot of money. The next is M&A as extension. This is where you move into a new geographic market or maybe into a new product market. So the merger of Bank of America and Merrill Lynch would be an example of that. Bank of America was a typical commercial bank. At the time, Merrill Lynch was an investment bank. And so those are actually two pretty different types of banks, and they come together and they create this powerhouse that in theory can start to cross-sell their clients. So it was not only some extension of markets, but you're hoping to get some synergy there. And you also sometimes can get some cost savings as well. Another example of this is when Dell bought Perot Systems. At that time, Perot Systems was big in healthcare consulting. And Dell was, and when I say healthcare consulting, a lot of times it was IT-based healthcare consulting. Dell wanted to get more into the consulting business, so they bought Perot Systems to jumpstart that consulting business. And in keeping with the theory that these things often don't work very well, I saw recently that basically Dell was putting up the remnants of Perot Systems for sale. Sometimes in extensions, you can get definitely some cost savings as well. And if you go back to the front, you'll see some of this. Again, the Anheuser InBev would fit perhaps into an extension. Cisco buying Iron Point would definitely fit into an extension sort of M&A. And then entrepreneurship, these are a little bit harder to find. And you can, again, the line between entrepreneurship and extension can be a little bit foggy, but really the company here is saying, I'm buying this company not because they have this great developed market, but because I really like where they are and I want to try to learn, I want to get their resources, I want to try to build it. And really the best example that comes to mind that you may be familiar with is when Facebook bought Oculus Rift, which is the maker of the virtual reality headset. This is something where Microsoft is saying it's strategically important for us to develop this because we think this is a growth market. Instead of trying to develop internally, let's go out and buy the people who've already got this product that's almost on the market. So you'll see where companies take fairly big steps out of what would seem to be their core competency, although certainly in this case, it's still in the high-tech industry, because they are trying to learn, move out in unpredictable ways, and grow their markets. I'm going to use this slide to not only explain what goes well, but what often gets messed up in the M&A process. Join me in the next video.